Hey everyone, it's been a little while. Had a lot going on recently and have been working on a project for Medify, which took up a lot of my extra video making time. However, with that done, things should return to a bit more of a stable schedule around here. But with that, today we're going to be looking at Robin. Definitely one of the more interesting characters in terms of design, for better or for worse for the people actually playing them. While they are slow, they have some pretty busted moves, and I can tell you their hitboxes are going to be pretty spicy. So why don't we take a look? As always, if you want to vote on future characters, and have your name at the end of every video I make, consider checking out my Patreon. It helps me a lot and makes me able to spend more time on making videos. And as usual, the visuals were made by Zeckemyro. Now, the big thing to keep in mind with Robin is how their sword changes depending on how much you use it. At the start of the match, you have a bronze sword, which will be replaced by a 11 sword after about 10 seconds. Then the 11 sword has 8 charges, and every time you use a move that uses it, it spends a charge. When it depletes, it goes back to being a bronze sword again, until another 10 seconds have passed. The same is true for the tomes, where they all have a certain amount of charge before they are spent. However, these ones lock you out of using the moves entirely until they recover. When the weapons run out of charges, they'll be dropped as items that you can throw, which is the only silver lining to the whole mechanic, really. It can allow for some fun stuff. Here's what the hitboxes look like. Pretty standard stuff, really. The books all deal the same damage when thrown, however the 11 sword is a bit stronger. Also, another kind of obscure thing that you likely might not know about is that while the sword is charging, you can actually make it charge faster by using moves that would have used it if you had it, as in aerials and smash attacks, which will speed it up slightly, meaning there's actually a reason to just spam aerials in place. Anyways, on with the moves. Robin's jab actually has a ton of hitboxes, with 6 in total, some out in front of them and some on the sword, as it's raised in the air. But let's not sweat the details here, it works like any other jab in the game, so let's not go too much into it. The second hit has 4 hitboxes, stunning you and pushing you out of it, and finally you have the choice of using either a launcher or a rapid jab. The gentleman looks like this, just a single hitbox launching you away with a fiery explosion. The rapid jab looks like this initially and repeats for as long as you hold it down, or at least for as long as you have wind tomes left, before having this launcher at the end. Nothing unexpected, but the hitboxes are pretty solid on the final hits. Do keep in mind that for rapid jab you do need to have the wind tome ready and the fire tome ready for the gentleman. We'll get more into how these are spent later, since other moves use them as well. For F tilt we have a sword swipe with the bronze sword. It's simply a single hitbox active on 2 frames that launches away. Unlike the smash attacks and aerials, you don't have the option to use the 11 sword here, which makes all of the tilt attacks feel kinda weak. Just the bronze sword sound effect feels so weak as well. But yeah, very simple move, not too much to say about it really. Down tilt is kinda like F tilt being a low swipe on the ground with the sword, having once again just a single hitbox that also once again lasts for 2 frames. However, the knockback is very low, so it probably won't actually launch until you are at higher damage ranges. The move is fine, it's very quick and without too much lag, but it doesn't really accomplish that much since you can't effectively combo out of it. But it's a fine little poking tool in neutral. Next up we have up tilt, which is quite the move. Robin swings their sword above them at an arc, which lasts for a whole bunch of frames. It consists of 3 hitboxes, all of which are the same however. Should you get hit by it, you'll be launched up into the air, in a pretty bad position that will likely lead to a combo. Again, the move just has a ton of active frames, making it great for catching landings and such. It would have been even better if it were not for the fact that these are some of the slowest characters in the game movement-wise. But the move is solid, just not super easy to land all the time. Dash tag is basically their only burst option, which is great seeing how running tilts are not really gonna do them that much good. Robin thrusts his sword forwards, and it has a single hitbox. It starts out being a lot bigger than a sword actually, and having some solid kill power as well. However, after 3 frames it becomes a bit smaller and weaker as the sour spot appears, which does linger for quite a while afterwards, covering a lot of area in total. Move is pretty good, although very punishable if missed. Robin's grab is actually pretty good. It counts as a magic grab, which makes Robin not have the leaning in animation that most other characters have, meaning it's harder to punish up close. The range is also better than most characters, although not by too much, but enough to be notably better. Dash and pivot grabs are pretty much the same really, just having slightly more range and covering more distance since you're moving, at the cost of more end lag of course, but they can get some pretty good rewards from them, so solid grabs overall. Okay, so now onto their aerials, which is where we get into the whole 11 sword mechanic for real. If you do a smash input when using an aerial, you get the 11 sword version of that move. Now these hitboxes are mostly the same, as in they use the same structure and layout, but the 11 sword is naturally a lot stronger, and have bigger hitboxes as well. They also come out on the same frame and have the same amount of lag, so you don't get any extra in that regard. First off, let's look at neutral air. Here's what the bronze hitbox looks like. It has 3 hitboxes of the same strength. First Robin swings in front and then another swing behind them, covering some pretty good area in the process. Now if you use the 11 sword version, the hitboxes on the swings are notably bigger, giving them even more range than before. The move also gains a lingering sour spot on the sword, where the bronze hit usually ends. This part is a lot weaker, however anything extra is nice. This is actually the case with every 11 sword hit. All of them have this lingering hitbox to symbolize the electricity of the move, but the move is pretty solid in both cases here. Pretty good zoning tool for people trying to get up in your face. Bronze Fair is a pretty unremarkable move, just having 3 tiny hitboxes spread out across the sword, and not really doing much in the way of damage or knockback. The 11 sword, however, is quite a different story, being significantly bigger across the main hit of the move, and as mentioned, lingering for a while afterwards. This one is one of the moves where the KO percent really does change a lot between the hits, 11 sword being able to take stocks way earlier than the bronze version. So make sure you have a little 11 sword left when you want to deal that final blow. Once again, we have a pretty mediocre bronze back here, only consisting of 3 hitboxes with the same strength. At least they gave him a hitbox on his arm to cover his blind spot. Could have very easily seen a world where they didn't do that. The 11 sword version, however, is absolutely massive, looking like some straight up DLC stuff here. And while the seed spot is only active for 2 frames, it hits like a truck and can steal stocks super early given the right circumstances. Once again, it has a lingering hitbox afterwards, acting as a safety net if you miss the move, meaning you can still get some advantage out of it. Now for up air, we have a really solid one. Even the bronze version here is quite respectable, having some decent hitboxes that reach pretty far into the air. But of course the main attraction is the 11 up air. This move is outstanding. You can pretty much do anything you want with it. It's super strong KOing very early, it's even quite safe on shield, and can lead to some very damaging combos if you get a landing up air. The hitbox of course is also massive, being way wider than the bronze hits, although not reaching too much further into the air, though it's still quite noticeable. The lingering hit is also great here, capable of catching people off guard and even get a sneaky extra combo if they don't expect it. It's a very good move, well worth spending some 11 charges on this one. Down air is likely the least splashy aerial they have, however, being just the usual down air. Robin's movement speed also does not really do the move any favors, seeing how most down airs require really exact positioning. The bronze version of this move actually does have a pretty big hitbox, relative to the other ones we have seen. However, this one doesn't even really have a spike. If nothing else, at least it does linger for a while, which is nice. The 11 version, on the other hand, on top of being bigger than the bronze version, does have a spike, which only hits aerial opponents. Grounded opponents will be launched away instead. This move naturally also has the lingering part, except it's actually pretty strong 1 frame afterwards without the spike, before being even smaller and lingering like normal. Decent move, though kinda hard to actually land a spike with, because of the mentioned lack of movement. For a second spike, we actually have up B, which is Robin's recovery move. This one consists of Robin shooting some wind below them, which as mentioned initially has a spiking hitbox that sends opponents down, while the other hitbox is a sour spot launching up instead. The spiking hitbox stays out for a bit, before becoming a bigger non-spiking hitbox. Then they shoot another wind after them. This one is actually a sweet spot for longer than the first one, at the cost of not being able to spike of course. However, this one does turn into a sour spot at the end. The move is dependent on you having the wind tome available. If you're out of charges, you actually just don't get to use the move, which can be pretty lame. But that won't really happen too often since it's only up B and jab that use the wind tome. Next special is Arc Fire, and this one is a really good one. It first starts out as a shot above Robin, and then descends onto the ground at an angle. The hitbox is not like crazy big, but the area it traverses more than makes up for that. When hitting an opponent or the ground, it turns into this hitbox, which unlike a lot of other moves like this, actually increase in size over the course of the move, trapping opponents within it, which can lead to a follow-up move, but most likely you have already been hit by another move, or will be hit after being launched by this one. It's a super good move, although it does come at the cost of burning through your fire tomes quite fast if you use it a lot. For down B, we have Nosferatu, definitely a weird move in the grand scheme of things. It used to be one of the only life-stealing moves in all of Smash, until it was added to a few other moves since then, though none of those come even close to the potency of this one however. The move has 2 hitboxes, the smaller one is for aerial opponents, while the further one is for grounded, meaning it does have more range when trying to hit grounded opponents. They ignore shields, making the move a command grab but with magic, I suppose. The move deals damage to the opponent for a while also healing Robin in the process. Robin is also totally intangible during the active frames, meaning it can actually beat out a bunch of moves if you can time it right, although that is pretty tricky. The move also uses its own tome entirely, which does not share its durability with any other move, meaning you can use the move 3 times before it breaks. It also has by far the longest recharge time of 30 seconds before you can get it back, so use them carefully. Finally, for our specials, we have Thunder and all the variants of it. Depending on how long you charge this move, you get 4 variants. First is just regular Thunder, which looks like this, and is a single hitbox traveling forwards. L Thunder is basically the same, except stronger and having a slightly bigger hitbox. Arc Thunder is very different however, having a much different speed, starting out slow and then gaining speed after a bit. On hit, instead it stuns the opponent and triggers this hitbox, which honestly looks really sick. Just love that it's actually like a big X, which they totally didn't have to do since the hitbox that actually traps you is this little one in the middle here. This one is also really good, since it can allow you to get some follow-up attacks, although you have to be pretty quick with this one, since they're not really stunned for that long anymore. Lastly, we have Thoron, which is the strongest Thunder on the surface. The hitbox is just a long stretch of electricity, which granted does hit pretty hard if it connects, although generally Arc Thunder will be a lot more useful overall, since it can trap people in shields and such. Lastly, as usual, we'll be taking a look at their smash attacks, which once again starts using the 11 sword and bronze sword. Unlike earlier, you don't have a choice here though. If the 11 sword is ready, it'll always use that, and if it's not, well, then you can't use it. The bronze sword version of up smash looks like this. It's actually quite big given how tiny the sword is. It's just a single hitbox however. That launches you up with mediocre kill power. 11 sword up smash is actually entirely different. First off, having a hitbox under Robin that covers close up. The 11 sword also does a little twirl in the air as it lingers for a long time. On the first 5 frames the move is the strongest, but after that lingers and is weaker. Great move when you have the 11 sword. It's super strong and covers a bunch of frames. F smash is a bit of a weird case. The hitbox is placed very strangely, being a lot closer to Robin than you would expect, and also not really covering more than half of the sword. Granted, the sword is tiny to begin with, but Robin leans pretty far forward, making the move have more range than it seems. But it's a very bizarre looking hitbox regardless. 11 sword on the other hand covers much more than the sword. In fact, it covers the whole area in front of Robin, and also packs much harder of a punch. As is tradition, it also does have the lingering hits on the sword for a few frames afterwards, although this one is less useful, since you're just standing still unlike with an aerial. Great move though, very strong to close out stocks if you land the sweet spot. For our last move of the day, we'll definitely be going out on a high note, at least with the 11 version of the move. The bronze version is so-so. It's just 2 hitboxes in front of Robin that, granted, actually does cover a fair amount of distance. But the real show is with 11 down smash. This move does some serious damage, both to shields and the character it presumably hits. In addition, after this hit, the move shoots out some electricity in the form of 2 huge hitboxes on the sides. In combination, it makes for a really dangerous move to get hit by, and you can easily get tripped by the shockwaves even if you avoid the first hit. It's a really great smash attack, if you have 11 sword of course. But that's gonna do it for Robin. Definitely one of the more interesting characters in the game. While the character does legit have some crazy moves in their pocket, their lack of movement speed really does tie them down in many ways. Also, the whole charge system with the tomes and swords can be a bit of a hindrance, even if it does allow them to have some pretty broken moves. Can't imagine but thinking the character would likely have been better off if they just evened out the bronze and 11 hits and made them not run out half the time. Although again, that would basically just result in another standard sword character. I do like it when they try to make weird mechanics for how a character works. Sometimes, as in this case, it makes them weaker, and sometimes they make them, you know, like way too good. But yes, that's about all I had today. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.